Okay, so, you know how they always tell you not to hike alone? Standard advice, right? Mostly worried about bears or twisting an ankle miles from anywhere. I used to laugh it off. I like being alone out there, the quiet, just me and the woods, but last fall changed everything. I went up to the Black Creek Trail, usually pretty quiet on weekdays. I was maybe an hour in, just hitting the first big switchback section that climbs up the ridge. So he doesn't wave back, doesn't move. Just stands there, a dark shape against the green and brown of the woods. My mind started racing, trying to rationalize it. Maybe he didn't see my wave, maybe he's deaf, maybe he's just weird. But the stillness, man, it was so absolute, like he wasn't breathing. I felt this prickle on the back of my neck, that primal danger signal your brain sends out. I decided I didn't want him behind me anymore. My blood ran cold. Seriously, ice water in my veins. Seeing him behind me was creepy, unsettling. Seeing him ahead, that wasn't just creepy, it was fundamentally wrong. It broke the rules of physics of how things work. My brain just couldn't process it. How did he get there? Did he fly? Did he teleport? Was I losing my mind? I stopped dead in my tracks, breathing hard, staring at him. He hadn't moved. Same pose, same unnerving stillness. Okay, fight or flight, right? My legs felt like lead, but every instinct screamed run. But run where? Back down the trail towards where he was, or forward towards where he is. Neither option felt good, neither felt safe. I was trapped between 2 points of utter strangeness. I slowly backed up a few steps, my eyes locked on the figure ahead. He didn't react, didn't turn, didn't acknowledge my movement in any way. It was like I was just scenery to him, or maybe. I decided I couldn't go forward. Passing him felt unthinkable. Even if he just stood there, the idea of walking past that statue, made my skin crawl. So turning back was the only real option, even though it meant heading towards where I first saw him. Maybe he was gone for good from that spot now. Maybe this whole thing was some bizarre, isolated incident. Wishful thinking, I know, but it was all I had. I reached the spot where I'd first seen him, down near the bottom of the switchbacks by that big fir tree. Empty. Thank God, just the tree, the trail, the damp earth. I didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just kept pushing, putting distance between me and that ridge. The fear was still there, buzzing under my skin, but it was mixed with a desperate kind of hope now. Maybe it was over. Maybe I'd imagined the second sighting. Stress, lack of oxygen from the climb, maybe. No, I knew what I saw. I must have been making good time, practically jogging large sections of the trail on the way down. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the adrenaline kept me going. I passed the halfway point, the section where the trail runs alongside Black Creek itself for a while. The sound of the rushing water was usually calming, but today it just sounded loud, masking any potential sounds of pursuit. Was he behind me, still up on the ridge, or somewhere else, waiting? Then something caught my eye. Off to the side of the trail, maybe 20 feet into the woods, tied around the trunk of a thin aspen tree, it was a piece of dark cloth, a strip maybe torn from a shirt or a jacket, dark like the clothes he was wearing. My heart leaped into my throat. Coincidence? Maybe. People leave trash, random bits of stuff get snagged on branches, but it was tied there deliberately, knotted tightly around the pale bark of the aspen, and it looked fresh, not faded or weathered. My legs were screaming, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Panic was a physical weight on my chest. The trail started to look more familiar now, wider, less overgrown. Signs of the trailhead approaching. A small wooden footbridge over a dry creek bed, a series of stone steps built into a slope. I recognized these. Almost there, just a little further. The relief was immense, but it didn't erase the fear. And then I saw it, the parking lot, my car. Oh my God, my beautiful beat-up Subaru never looked so good. It was like seeing a lifeboat after drifting at sea. I burst out of the tree line, stumbling onto the gravel, gasping for air. My keys were already in my hand. I must have dug them out of my pocket during that last frantic push without even realizing it. I fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking violently. Click. The door unlocked. The clock read 4:37 p.m. 4:37, that couldn't be right. I checked my phone, tucked into my pocket. Same time, 4:37. I distinctly remembered checking the time when I started the hike. It was just after 10:00 a.m. The whole loop, even at a leisurely pace, usually takes me 3 hours, maybe 3.5 tops. I'd practically run back down the second half. Even with the stop on the ridge, the climb, the panic descent. My mind raced, trying to fill the gap. 3 hours. What could happen in 3 hours? Did I fall, hit my head? Maybe I was concussed, hallucinating the whole thing, the stranger, the impossible movement. It was a comforting thought almost, a rational explanation, but it didn't feel right. My head didn't hurt more than a tension headache from the stress. I didn't have any scrapes or bruises consistent with a major fall or wandering through dense underbrush for hours. I slammed the car into reverse, gravel spitting under the tires, and backed out of the parking space way too fast. My hands were still shaking, slick with sweat on the steering wheel. I cranked the wheel, shifted into drive, and peeled out of the parking lot onto the narrow access road. I didn't look back at the trailhead again. I didn't dare. I just kept my eyes glued to the road ahead, pushing the speed limit, wanting to put as much distance as possible between me and that place. Finally, after what felt like another eternity, I hit the main highway. Actual civilization. Other cars. Signs for towns. It felt like surfacing after being submerged in deep, dark water. The oppressive weight of the woods receded slightly. I merged onto the highway, blending in with the sparse afternoon traffic. I still felt shaky, wired, but the immediate, visceral terror started to fade, replaced by a profound sense of unease and confusion. I kept checking my mirrors obsessively. I made it home, pulled into my driveway, killed the engine. The silence was deafening. My suburban street looked aggressively normal, almost surreal after the events of the day. Green lawns, houses lined up neatly, a kid riding a bike down the block. It felt like a different planet compared to Black Creek Trail. I practically ran from the car to the front door, fumbling with my keys again. Inside, I locked the door, bolted it, checked the windows. Ridiculous, I know. That night was rough. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside my window sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I kept thinking I saw movement in the periphery, a tall, dark shape standing just outside the range of the streetlights. I barely slept, maybe an hour or two of restless, nightmare-filled dozing. In the dreams, I was back on the trail, but it was endless, twisting back on itself. And he was always there. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and exhaustion. I called in sick to work. I couldn't face people, couldn't pretend everything was normal. I spent hours online searching for anything similar. Strange hiker sightings, lost time in woods, unexplained figures on trails. I found plenty of creepy stories, folklore about weird things in forests, missing persons cases, but nothing quite matched my experience. I eventually forced myself back into a semblance of routine. Went back to work, tried to act normal, but everything felt muted, off, like I was watching my own life through a thick pane of glass. The experience had fundamentally changed my perception of reality. Woods and nature, which I used to love, now filled me with a low-level dread. I avoided parks, hiking trails, even heavily wooded streets. Every tall, thin shadow looked like him for a heart-stopping moment. Weeks turned into months. Autumn faded into winter. The sharp edges of the terror dulled slightly, replaced by a chronic, low-grade anxiety. I never went back to Black Creek, obviously. I even avoided driving on the highway that passed near the turnoff. But sometimes late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd find myself staring out the window into the darkness, searching the shadows between houses, the stretch of woods at the end of the cul-de-sac, looking for a tall, still figure, looking for him. So that's the story. That's what happened on Black Creek Trail last fall. I know it sounds insane. A guy who was behind me is suddenly ahead of me. 3 hours of missing time. It breaks all the rules, but it happened. I live with it every day. The not knowing is the worst part, I think. Who was he? What did he want? What happened during those lost hours? And the biggest question, the one that keeps me awake at night, staring into the dark, was it really a one-time encounter, or is he still? Look, everyone has that one camping trip story, right? Usually involves bad weather, maybe a raccoon stealing food. Mine's the reason I haven't slept properly near trees in 15 years. It's about the last campfire. Not just the last one of that trip, but maybe the last real one I ever felt safe around. You ever get that feeling deep in the woods that the silence isn't empty, that it's listening? Dave, always the practical one, tried to laugh it off first. "Probably just wind in a hollow log," he muttered, but his voice didn't sound convincing, not even to himself. He poked the fire, sending a shower of sparks spiraling up into the infinite blackness above, a brief, defiant flare against the overwhelming dark. But the sound didn't stop. If anything, the brief burst of light seemed to make it clearer, sharper. It wasn't wind. We sat there for what felt like an eternity, frozen, just listening to that relentless, low-frequency chant. Every normal night sound, the chirp of a cricket, the distant hoot of an owl, felt amplified, distorted, potentially masking something else. The fire dwindled further, the circle of light shrinking, pulling the darkness closer around us like a shroud. Dave finally broke the silence, his voice tight. "Okay, this is weird. Seriously weird, maybe. Maybe it's other campers, lost." Then something shifted. The humming didn't stop, but it changed pitch slightly, became closer. It was hard to tell. Sound plays tricks on you in the woods, especially at night. But there was a new element, a faint rustling in the underbrush just at the edge of our hearing, directly opposite where the humming seemed strongest. Not the sound of a deer stepping carefully or a squirrel scurrying. It was heavier, more deliberate, like something large trying and failing to move silently. Snap! A twig broke. Dave kept sweeping the light back and forth, his breathing ragged. Sarah was practically hiding behind me, her eyes darting nervously between the illuminated patch and the overwhelming darkness surrounding it. The humming seemed to swell again, pressing in, making the air feel thick and heavy. And then we saw it. Not in the main beam of the flashlight, but right at the edge where the light faded into shadow. For just a second, caught in the periphery. It wasn't clear, just a shape, tall. Did you see that?" Sarah stammered, her voice trembling uncontrollably. Dave didn't answer, just kept the flashlight beam trained on the spot where the figure had been, sweeping it slowly, methodically, as if hoping to catch it again. His knuckles were white on the flashlight casing. I couldn't speak either, my throat suddenly dry as desert sand. The air crackled with unspoken fear. That brief glimpse had shattered any remaining rational explanation. This wasn't a prank. "Pack up," Dave said finally, his voice low and strained, never taking the flashlight beam off the woods. Quietly, quickly. There was no argument, no discussion. The shared terror was enough. We moved with frantic, clumsy haste, stuffing sleeping bags into sacks, collapsing the tent poles with trembling hands, shoving gear haphazardly into backpacks. Every snap of canvas, every clink of metal felt deafeningly loud in the oppressive silence, broken only by that maddening, low hum. We hefted our packs, the weight unfamiliar and cumbersome in our panic state. Dave took point with the flashlight, its beam cutting a nervous path ahead. I was in the middle, Sarah clinging to the back of my pack, her footsteps shuffling uncertainly behind me. The trail back to the car was maybe 2 miles, but it felt like 100 in that suffocating darkness. The humming followed us, or maybe it was everywhere. It was impossible to tell anymore. We'd been walking for maybe 20 minutes, though it felt like hours, when Dave suddenly stopped dead. He held up a hand, silencing our ragged breathing. The flashlight beam froze on something on the path ahead. At first, I couldn't make it out. It just looked like a dark patch on the dirt. Then, as Dave edged closer, the shape resolved itself. It was a sleeping bag, neatly rolled, tied with cord, lying directly in the middle of the trail, identical to the ones we used. But it wasn't ours. Nobody wanted to touch it. We stood there, staring at the sleeping bag as if it were radioactive. Dave kicked at it tentatively with the toe of his boot. It shifted slightly, revealing nothing underneath but dirt. "Whose is it?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath. "There's no one else out here." Dave shook his head, his face grim in the flashlight's glow. "I don't know, but we're not sticking around to find out." He shone the light further down the path, then back into the trees. "We go around it." The clicking sound faded after a few minutes, or maybe we just outran it, plunging deeper into the woods. But the humming remained our constant, unwelcome companion. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the adrenaline kept pushing me forward. Fear is a powerful fuel. We stumbled on, Dave occasionally sweeping the flashlight beam behind us, checking our back trail. It was always empty, too empty. That second sleeping bag broke something in us. The frantic energy drained away, replaced by a hollow, numbing dread. Dave lowered the flashlight, the beam falling back to the path ahead, but his shoulders slumped. Sarah started crying softly, stifled sobs shaking her body. I just felt empty. What could we even do? We were lost in a nightmare logic, pursued by something that defied physics and reason. Running felt pointless if it could be ahead of us, behind us, above us, all at once. Suddenly the flashlight flickered, once, twice. Then it died, plunging us into absolute Stygian darkness. A collective gasp escaped us. "No, no, no," Dave muttered frantically, shaking the heavy flashlight, banging it against his palm. Nothing. The cheap backup light was buried deep in someone's pack, impossible to find quickly in this blackness. We were blind, utterly, terrifyingly blind. The transition was shocking, disorienting. Then, as abruptly as it died, the flashlight flared back to life. Not the steady beam from before, but a weak, flickering, sickly yellow glow. It sputtered, threatened to die again, but held. Dave let out a shaky breath, aiming the weak beam around us in a jerky circle. The clicking stopped instantly the moment the light returned. Silence, except for the ever-present humming. We scanned the woods, illuminated now in brief, unreliable flashes. Nothing. No sign of movement, no source for the clicking. We practically crashed out of the tree line into the small, gravel clearing where we'd parked the car. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. The familiar shape of Dave's old SUV, glinting faintly under the starlight, was the most beautiful sight I'd ever seen. Safety, civilization, escape. Dave fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them once onto the gravel. We sat there in the dead car, enveloped by a silence that was somehow more terrifying than the woods. The humming had stopped. The instant the engine failed for the last time, the low, pervasive drone that had haunted us since the campfire just ceased, vanished, leaving behind a ringing stillness that felt profoundly unnatural, like the world holding its breath. The absence of the sound was almost worse than its presence. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost all meaning in that silent, dead car. We didn't talk. What was there to say? We just sat, locked in our own private terrors, listening to the silence, waiting. Waiting for the humming to return, for the clicking to start again, for a shape to appear at the window. Nothing happened. The silence stretched on, becoming its own form of torture. The only sounds were our own breathing, Sarah's occasional sniffles, the frantic thumping of my own heart. Dave saw it too. He stiffened, his head slowly lifting from the steering wheel. We both stared at the sleeping bag, lying there so innocently, yet radiating pure menace. How had it gotten there, when we hadn't heard a thing? No footsteps on the gravel, no rustling, nothing. It had simply appeared, placed there while we sat trapped and blind in the car, waiting for rescue. Was it a message, a final taunt, or a warning? Maybe a sign that it could get to us even here, inside the locked car. "Dave, what is it? What's inside?" I yelled, my voice cracking. He didn't answer. He just kept staring, his mouth opening and closing silently like a fish gasping for air. He looked broken. Sarah started screaming again, raw, terrified screams this time. I fumbled with my own door handle, needing to see, needing to understand what could cause that reaction. As my door swung open, Dave finally turned, stumbling back towards the car, his eyes unfocused, filled with sheer terror. "Get back in." We drove for hours, not stopping, not talking. Dave just drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. Sarah eventually cried herself to sleep in the back. I kept watching the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that tall, thin figure standing on the roadside, or a sleeping bag appearing on the roof. Nothing. Just the empty road unspooling behind us. We never spoke about what Dave saw in that sleeping bag. Have you ever felt eyes on the back of your head, even when you're completely alone in your car, driving down some forgotten highway late at night? That's exactly how it started for me. Just a feeling. It was maybe 1:30 in the morning, heading back from my parents' place way out in the sticks, miles from anywhere really. I drove for another 10 minutes, maybe 15, kept checking the mirror. The truck stayed back there, maintaining the exact same distance. Not closer, not further away, just shadowing me. It was weirdly precise. Usually cars either catch up and pass or they fall back, take an exit. This one didn't. It was like it was tethered to me by an invisible string. I tried speeding up a little, pushing the needle 5, then 10 miles over the limit. The highway was empty. Who was going to notice? Okay, deep breaths. I needed to think, not panic. Panicking gets you killed in the movies, right? Though right then, this felt terrifyingly real. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe they were lost, needed directions. But who follows someone for 15 miles at 1:30 in the morning just to ask for directions? And why not flash their lights, honk something? No, this wasn't about needing help. This felt like a hunt. I glanced at my phone resting in the cup holder. No signal, of course. I needed to see it. I needed to know what I was dealing with. Maybe if I could just get a glimpse of the driver, put a face to the fear, it would make it less monstrous, less unknown. There was a slight incline ahead. I figured if I slowed down enough just before the crest, maybe the truck would have to pull up closer behind me before cresting the hill itself, giving me a precious second or two to see something, anything, in the rearview mirror as its headlights dipped. It was another gamble. My town wasn't that far now. Maybe 20 minutes tops, familiar territory, streetlights, houses, people. The thought was a lifeline. If I could just make it there, I could lose this thing in the side streets, pull into my driveway, get inside, lock the doors. Safety felt agonizingly close, yet impossibly far away. 20 minutes felt like an eternity with that thing latched onto my bumper. I started thinking about the turnoff, the exit ramp from the highway. I drove right past the exit. My exit, the one that led home. The engine noise seemed deafening in the sudden absence of hope. Sailing past that sign felt like crossing a point of no return. Where was I going now? Where was it taking me? The highway continued its relentless path through the dark woods, but now it felt alien, hostile. Every mile marker I passed felt like another nail in my coffin. Okay, new plan. If I couldn't get off the highway conventionally, maybe I could force the issue. Up ahead, I knew there was an old logging trail, barely more than a dirt track, that intersected the highway. It wasn't an official exit, just a muddy path used by timber trucks years ago, probably overgrown now. It would be risky. The trail might be impassable. I could get stuck, wreck the car. But staying on this highway under the truck's control felt like a guaranteed bad ending. The trail was worse than I remembered. Muddy, rutted, and littered with rocks. My sedan bottomed out with a sickening crunch almost immediately. The steering wheel vibrated violently in my hands. Branches, thick as my arm, clawed at the windows, screeching across the glass like fingernails on a chalkboard. It was like the woods themselves were trying to hold me back, to deliver me to the thing behind me. And behind me, the truck followed. It handled the rough terrain easily. The trail twisted and turned deeper into the forest. The air grew heavy, damp, smelling of wet earth and decaying leaves. It felt like I'd left the real world miles behind, plunged into some forgotten primal place where normal rules didn't apply. My car continued its painful journey, groaning and shuddering with every rut and rock. How was it still running? Sheer terror, maybe, or just delaying the inevitable. The truck behind me was a constant, oppressive presence. Seeing that wreck, that monument to failure, did something to me. The despair didn't vanish, but it sharpened into a kind of desperate, cornered animal defiance. No, I wasn't going to end up like that, not rusting away forgotten in these woods. If this thing wanted me, it was going to have to work for it. I didn't know what I could do, but I wasn't going to just drive meekly to my doom. I scanned the trail ahead again, looking for anything, any advantage. We sat there. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The only sounds were the frantic thumping of my own heart, the ragged sound of my breathing, and the low, guttural idle of the truck's engine. It felt like a standoff in some surreal, mud-caked western, except I was driving a beat-up sedan and my opponent was something else, something patient, something that didn't feel the need to rush. My mind raced. What now? Get out of the car, confront it. That seemed like suicide. Try to reverse. The blinking stopped. Both headlights now shone steadily, pinning me again. Then I heard a sound that made my blood run cold, a click. A loud click, metallic and sharp, echoing slightly in the enclosed space of the trail. It sounded like a door handle. My eyes shot to the side mirror, heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break them. Was someone getting out? Was this it? The confrontation? What could I do? Just sitting here felt like waiting for execution. Maybe I could reason with it, or whoever was driving it. It sounded pathetic even to me. Shouting into the darkness at a potentially empty, possibly sentient truck, but I was desperate. I rolled down my window just a crack, the damp, earthy smell of the woods instantly filling the car, mingling with the scent of my own fear. The truck's engine noise became louder, more immediate. "What do you want?" Suddenly, the truck's engine noise changed. The low rumble deepened, intensified, vibrating through my seat, through my bones. It sounded like it was revving up, preparing for something. This is it, I thought. It's done playing. It's going to push me, ram me, crush me against the trees. I braced myself again, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. My eyes were squeezed shut. Come on, just get it over with. But again, nothing. No impact. Silence. Complete unnerving silence from the truck behind me. No engine noise, no idling rumble, nothing. Just the rain tapping on the roof. But the headlights were still on, blazing just as brightly as before. It felt like a predator holding its breath before striking. What did the silence mean? Had it stalled? Broken down? Could I actually be free? Could I just drive away now? Hope, that stubborn, foolish thing, flickered again. I drove like a bat out of hell, or at least as fast as the treacherous trail and my poor, abused sedan would allow. Every sound the car made, the whining engine, the splash of mud, the scrape of a low branch, made me jump. I kept expecting to hear that monstrous engine roar back to life behind me, to see those piercing headlights reappear in my mirror. But there was nothing. Just the darkness, the rain, and the frantic beat of my own heart. The trail seemed endless, twisting, turning, rising, falling. A dead end. After everything, after that frantic escape down the trail, it ended here, trapped. My heart sank like a stone. The relief I'd started to feel moments before evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, heavy dread. I slumped over the steering wheel, utterly defeated. This was it. There was nowhere else to go. I couldn't go forward, and going back meant passing the spot where I'd left the silent truck. Was it still there, waiting? I must have drifted off, exhaustion finally claiming me despite the terror. I don't know for how long, maybe minutes, maybe an hour, but I woke up with a jolt, heart pounding, instantly alert. What woke me? A sound, a feeling. I scanned the dark woods outside my windows. Everything looked the same. Still, silent, menacing. The weak moonlight still filtered down. Then I saw it, not outside, inside, on the passenger seat next to me. There was something there that hadn't been there before. I stared at the key, lying cold and heavy in my palm. An ignition key, an old one. My blood ran cold as the connection clicked sickeningly into place. The silent truck, the dead engine, the key appearing inside my locked car. It couldn't be. It was insane, but what other explanation was there? Was this truck offering itself to me, or demanding something from me? Was it broken down back there on the trail and this was its way of asking for help, or was it a trap? I don't know how long I sat there, frozen at the dead end, the cold key a heavy weight in my hand, heavier still in my mind. Morning seemed impossibly far away. The idea of going back down that trail, back towards the spot where the truck sat silent, was unthinkable. Yet the key pulsed with a silent demand. Eventually, sheer exhaustion and the overwhelming need to do something, anything, made the decision for me. I wasn't going back there. Not tonight. Not ever, if I could help it.